Oh, I'm so cold. Yeah, my heart's sinking like a stone. Cold, I'm so cold. Yeah, my heart is sinking like a stone. I'm so cold. Yeah, my heart is sinking like a stone. Cold. I'm so cold. Yeah, my heart is sinking like a stone. I'm so cold. Yeah, my heart is sinking like a stone.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome in. I hope everyone is doing well. So, today's topic is going to be about Miss Natalee Holloway. So, she passed away tragically, very tragically. And we are going to watch the full interview with her mother, who finally has been able to get closure.
Oh, I'm so cold. Yeah, my heart's sinking like a stone. Cold.
Welcome in. Don't be shy. Step up and say hi. So, Miss Natalee Ann Holloway, born of October 21st, 1986, passed away May 30th, 2005. She was finally declared deceased January 12th of 2012. She was 18-year-old American woman from Alabama, Mountain Brook, Alabama. May 30th of 2005 in Aruba, she vanished. She had graduated from Mountain Brook High School May 24th, 2005. Before her trip, her disappearance resulted in a media sensation in the United States and a lot of those conspiracy theories, etc. Holloway was scheduled to fly home from the Caribbean islands on May 30th, 2005, but she failed to appear for her flight. Her classmates last saw her outside Carlos and Charlie's, a restaurant and a nightclub. She was in a car with local residents. Jordan, I guess you would say Jordan or Joran Van Der Sloot. The brothers, Deepak and Sadish Kalop. When the three men were questioned, they said they had dropped Miss Holloway off at her hotel and denied knowing like what had happened to her. Like they just completely like just kind of blew it off. They really didn't put much thought or effort into it of where she was or, how she had come up missing. I'm sorry if you're in chat chit-chatting. I'm sorry. My chat is still like it's like in spinning motion. So I digress. So the last place her close school friends had saw her was at this restaurant with a couple of gentlemen. Those gentlemen were questioned, and they denied knowing anything about her whereabouts. Well, Van Der Sloot was arrested twice on suspicion involvement in her disappearance. Kalipos were each arrested 3 times due to lack of evidence. These 3 suspects were released each time without being charged with a crime. And if you don't have enough evidence, a lot of times those crimes go unnoticed. They well, not unnoticed, but the the perpetrator gets off very easily. You know, you have to have like a substantial amount of evidence for a good conviction. And when that's not readily available, then they have to let them go. So due to the lack of evidence, these 3 were released, each time without being charged with a crime. Holloway's parents criticized the Aruban police for their lack of progress in this investigation, interrogation, etc. They knew that there was just something not right about these men. Like they knew something, that there was something going on. The family also called for a boycott of Aruba, which gained the governor of Alabama, Bob Rayleigh's support, but to fail again. Failed. They didn't get the backing that they were needing in a case like this one. With the assistance of somewhat 100 volunteers, Aruban investigators conducted an extensive search and operation. American special agents from the FBI, Dutch soldiers, Dutch Air Force, in addition to ground searches, divers, digging through the ocean, massive, massive hunts for Miss Holloway's body. She was never found. On December 18th, 2007, Aruba prosecutors announced that the case would be closed without charging anyone with the crime. I know, absurd. This is ridiculous. This is one of those ridiculous cases that just eats you up. eats you up alive. The Aruban prosecutor's office reopened the case February of 2008. They received some video footage of Vandersloot under the influence of marijuana, saying that Holloway died in the morning of her disappearance. How did he know that? Did he have something to do with it? And that a friend had disposed of her body. Vandersloot later denied what he said had been true. And in an interview, he said that he had sold Holloway into sexual slavery. I don't know what could be worse, either knowing that your child is missing, perhaps passed away, or even sold into slavery. He later again recanted his comments. In January of 2012, Vandersloot was convicted May 30th, 2010, for the murder of 21-year-old Stephanie Flores Ramirez in Lima, Peru. So this wasn't his first time in the slightest. This wasn't his first rodeo. He got away with it once. He got away with it again. So at the request of Holloway's father, an Alabama judge, Alan King, declared Holloway legally dead on January 12, 2012. On June 8, 2023, Vandersloot, who was still the main suspect in Holloway's disappearance, was extradited to the United States to face trial for extortion, wire fraud, with both of those charges being linked to Holloway's disappearance. On October 18th, 2023, he pled guilty to extortion charges, as well as confessing to killing her by blunt force trauma after she rejected his advances. Holloway was the first of two children born to Dave and Elizabeth Holloway. And, typical parents, coming up in, Memphis, Tennessee. Her parents had divorced in 1993, and she and her younger brother, Matthew, were raised by her mother. In 2000, Beth married George, who they called Jug Twitty, a prominent Alabama businessman, and the family moved to Mount Brook, Alabama. Holloway graduated with honors in May 2005 from Mountain Brook High School, located in a wealthy suburb in Birmingham. She was a member of the National Honor Society and school dance squad and participated in extracurricular activities. Holloway was scheduled to attend the University of Alabama on a full scholarship, where she had planned to pursue the pre-med track. At that time of his daughter's disappearance, Dave Holloway was an insurance agent for State Farm in Meridian, Mississippi, while Beth Twitty was employed by Mountain Brook School System. As far as her disappearance went, on Thursday, May 26, 2005, Holloway and 124 fellow graduates of Mountain Brook High School arrived in Aruba for a 5-day unofficial graduation trip. The teenagers were accompanied by 7 chaperones. According to the teacher, the chaperone Bob Plummer, the chaperones met with the students each day to make sure that they were fine. Jody Berman, who organized the trip, stated that the chaperones were not supposed to keep up with their every move. Well, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, like, why wouldn't you keep an eye on? They're still kiddos, young adults, if they're adults. No, they're not quite adults. But I don't know. If I was taking them that far away from home, I mean, come on. You think they'd keep a better eye on them? Police Commissioner Gerald Dumpig, who headed the investigation from the mid 2005 until 2006, stated that Mountain Brook students engaged in wild partying and a lot of drinking, lots of room for switching up every night. We know that Holiday Inn told them that they weren't welcome next year. I guess they were making too much of a ruckus. Natalee, we knew, who drank all day, every day. We have statements that state that she would have a cocktail every morning. So much drinking that Natalee didn't show up for breakfast 2 mornings. She may have had a hangover. Two Holloway's classmates, Liz Kane and Claire Furman, agreed that the drinking on the trip was kind of excessive. You think? Holloway was last seen with her classmates around 1:30 in the morning on Monday, May 30th. And she was leaving the orange-ested bar nightclub, Carlos and Charlie's. She left in the car with 17-year-old Joran van der Sloot, a Dutch honor student who was living in Aruba, attending the International School of Aruba, and his two surname friends, brothers, 21, Deepak Khalip, the owner of the car, and 18-year-old Stadish Khalip. Hollows also scheduled to fly home later that day, but she did not appear for her return flight. Her packed luggage and passport were found in her Holiday Inn room. Aruban authorities initiated a search for Holloway throughout the island and surrounding waters, but did not find her. Early in the investigation, immediately following Holloway's missed flight, her mother and stepfather flew with friends to Aruba via a private jet. Within 4 hours of landing on the island, the Twitties presented the Aruban police with the name and address of Van der Sloot, who was the person with whom Holloway left the nightclub. Beth stated that Van der Sloot full name was given to her that night by the night manager at the Holiday Inn, who supposedly recognized him on a videotape. I guess he was frequent there. Van der Sloot initially denied knowing Holloway's name, but then he did collaborate that story with the two brothers. Van der Sloot related that he had driven Holloway to the California Lighthouse area, Arashi Beach, because she wanted to see some sharks. They later dropped Holloway off at her hotel at 2 a.m. This was according to Van der Sloot. Holloway fell down, excited. The car would, I guess, like she had fallen down because she was so excited that he had stated. This is like what he had stated. He stated that he and the brothers were driving. Holloway approached by a man in the dark with a dark shirt on, and those who were, I guess, recognized by security guards. The search and rescue efforts for Holloway began immediately. Hundreds of volunteers in Aruba and the United States had joined into this effort. During the first days of the search, the Aruban government gave thousands of civilian servants the day off to participate in this rescue. 50 Dutch Marines conducted an extensive search of the shoreline. Aruban banks raised $20,000 to provide the support and aid in the volunteer search teams. Beth Twitty, whom you see here in this video that I have yet to play, is her mother. And she was provided housing initially at the Holiday Inn, where she coincidentally stayed in the same room as her daughter. Reports indicated that Holloway did not appear on any nighttime surveillance camera footage in the hotel lobby. However, Twitty had made various statements as whether the cameras were operational that night or not. According to an April 19th, 2006 statement made by Twitty, the video cameras at the Holiday Inn were not functioning the night of Holloway's vanishing. That's convenient. The search for physical evidence was extensive and subject to occasional false leads, as within any case. American law enforcement cooperated substantially with the Aruban authorities for early days of investigation. The U.S. Secretary of State stated to reporters that the United States was in constant contact with the Aruban authorities. Substantial resources are being applied to this as they continue to ask for more. In 2005, multiple suspects had been arrested. On June 5th, the Aruban police detained Nick John, Abram Jones, former security guards from the nearby Allegro Hotel, which was then closed for renovations, on suspicions of murder and kidnapping. Authorities have never officially disclosed the reason for the arrests, but according to the news accounts and statements made by Van der Sloot and the brothers, had many factors in these arrests. Now, I would take that as, these brothers were saying, oh, well, I saw her with this person or this said person, but yet really giving no real information that they had been guilty. John and Jones were released on June 13th without being charged. On June 9th, Van der Sloot and the brothers were again arrested on suspicion of kidnapping and murder of Holloway. Aruban laws allow for investigators to make an arrest based on serious suspicion. In order to continue holding the suspect in custody, there has to be a significant amount of evidence. And certain amount of things have to be in line with being able to hold the suspects that are being charged. Dumpig stated that a close observance of the three men began 3 days after Holloway was reported missing, and the investigation including surveillance, telephone, wiretaps, and even monitoring their emails. As the investigation continued, David Cruz, who's a spokesman for the Aruban Minister of Justice, falsely indicated on June 11th that Holloway was dead, and the authorities knew the location of her body. A misinformation campaign. The Evening Dumpig alleged that the Associated Press that one of the detained young men admitted something bad happened to Halloway after the suspect took her to the beach, and then the suspect leading the police to the scene. The next morning, prosecution spokesman Vivian Van der Biezen refused to confirm or deny these allegations, simply stating that the investigation was very crucial and a very important moment. On June 17th, the sixth person, later identified as disc jockey Steve Gregory, was also arrested. Seems like there's a lot of people that were involved in this missing young lady. I guess to a point I can understand why there was so many conspiracies about when, why, where, and what. According to Status Quo's attorney, David K.O.C.K. Koch and Van der Sloot called Deepak and Kalpo. I think it's Kalpo. I think that's how you say Kalpo. To tell later that they were walking home when they sent him a message 40 minutes later, and then at some point in time during this interrogation, Van der Sloot detailed a third account that he was dropped off at home. So he keeps changing his story. So he's like, okay, 40 minutes later, this is when this happened. And then they didn't see her at all. It just goes and goes wow. The latest story about the brothers were kind of like finger pointing in a direction, like they wanted to tell who did it, but I think they were afraid. So I guess these boys also got into a lot of arguments during this time. So they were familiar with each other and their stories didn't match. And according to this clipping, it says there was great arguments, even in front of the judge, because their stories didn't match. This girl, she was from Alabama. She's not going to stay in a car with two black kids. We believe the second story where they were dropped off by the Marriott. The following hearings before the judge, the Calpo brothers were released on Monday, July 4th, but Van der Sloot was detained for an additional 60 days. So they knew that he had something to do with it, but they just couldn't figure out what. On July 4th, the Royal Netherlands Air Force deployed 3 F-16 aircraft equipped with infrared sensors to aid in the search, but the results came up empty. What did these kids do with her? In March of 2006, it was reported that the satellite photos were being compared with photographs taken more recently, presumably from the F-16s, in an attempt to find the unexpected shifts in the ground that like shallow grounds where Miss Holloway could have been buried in, like kind of like, graves where you can still sense the ground has been altered. After a local gardener came forward with information, a small pond near the Aruba Racket Club close to the Marriott Hotel beach was partly drained. In July, on the 27th and the 30th of 2005, according to Jug Twitty, the gardener claimed that he had seen Van Deer attempting to hide his face when he drove by the Racket Club with, guess who? The brothers. On that very morning that she came up missing. And this was between 2:30 in the morning and 3 in the morning. I know, crazy. So I guess there was another person that was out there jogging that had claimed that they had seen the men burying a blonde-haired woman in a landfill during the afternoon. In the afternoon on May 30th. Okay, so the police had searched the landfill in the days following her disappearance. At the jogger's statements, the landfill was searched 3 times with FBI, cadaver dogs. No futility. Holloway's family initially offered $175,000 and donors offered an additional $50,000 for her safe return. 2 months after her disappearance, the reward increased to $200,000 up to $1 million. And then an additional $100,000 reward for information leading to the location of her remains. In August of 2005, the reward for the information of leading to Natalee's corpse was increased to another 100,000 and then again to 250,000. Here I'm going to take a short break and have a little intermission.
Oh, I'm so cold. Yeah, my heart's sinking like a stone.
Say thank you so much for doing this. I know it's been a long day and a long 18 years for you, so we appreciate your time. And my first question is just how are you holding up?
Yeah. Well, I think I'm holding up pretty well. It feels good. My son's here, right here on site with me, and that just makes me feel even stronger to have Natalee's brother, because he's out there doing interviews too, and I'm like, so it feels good. I'm tired, but if it's a good tired.
You said after the hearing today, you felt victorious.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Because when I think back to who I was and what happened to me in 2005 with Iran, and I'm sitting there at the Holiday Inn at night, 4 a.m. in the morning, May 31st, 2005, and he was over me. He held all the power over me. And I was desperate and just begging him to give me Natalee, give her back, where is she? And then now I fast forwarded to 18, and I feel like I have the power and the victory over him, because all he's going to hear is that jail cell door slam to remind him he's a double murderer. So it feels very, that's like a weight is lifting, because we definitely came full circle to shift roles. So it feels very good.
How, over the years, not only have you had to deal with your own grief, but you were, desperate for answers. We had this main suspect, and in the meantime, while you pushed and pushed, another young woman died. That must be devastating for you, as hard as you were trying to get him put away.
Yes, because in 2005, I knew that he was responsible for her disappearance. I did not know that, of course, anything that we know today, but I knew that he was definitely involved in her demise of her one way or the other. So that was in 2005. Aruba let him go. 2010, I had him. Aruba let him go freely to Peru and bludgeon a second young girl to death. So I'm thinking, I did everything I could in 2005 and 2010 to stop him, but Aruba did nothing besides be complicit with him and let him go. So, that's why I feel like I can live with my decision that I got the answers that I wanted, even though, yes, it came with a plea agreement, but I did everything I knew to do to stop him in the beginning.
You got the confession that you wanted. You know now what he says happened.
Yes.
And does it give you what you thought it would, all these years that you've wanted to know those questions, that you wanted to have those questions answered?
It gives me more than what I thought I was going to have, and I never thought about it just being over, because there's been so many rabbit holes. They were just like a sea of rabbit holes, swirling theories, and I was into all of them because we didn't have anything, and I think we just began chasing these, running down these rabbit holes repeatedly. So it's nice it's over. It's stopped. So my nightmare is over, and I've always said that not knowing, to me, since I've experienced that, is far worse and more tumultuous than the knowing, even as brutally hard as it is to your soul and heart.
Yeah. When he said those words, when he described what happened, he's lied to you in the past. We know that.
Yes.
Do you feel truth in it?
Yes, I do, and the reason why, because it was such a comprehensive, and conclusive, series of events that took place, including the polygraph, the proffer. I have all this team at the federal agents there, and so the people that came in from Miami, the people here in Birmingham, the U.S. prosecutor, and so I felt yes, and I was fortunate that I was able to hear it real time as well, and I think that is because I know the details of the story as well. So yes. Very confident. I even met with the polygrapher that was able to spend time with him and obtain these results. So I feel 1,000% good and strong.
I think he apologized to you and your family today too. How do you receive that?
I heard it, but I feel like it's a hollow apology, because I don't think a double murderer and someone who can extort money and make a mother of a child you murdered pay you money, So it felt very hollow, it felt scripted, but that's okay. I think all probably, especially murderers, find a priest in prison. They all seem to. So I think that's kind of normal.
Yeah. So what do you do from here? What's next?
What do I do from here? Well, I don't know yet. I thought I'd just kind of see what's on the agenda with Matt and my 2 grandchildren and kind of join life again. I feel like I've put a lot of things on hold in the back burner and taken second places. So I think it's going to be nice to kind of, feel a little bit more normal in society, to know that's put to rest. And I've did what I set out I'd do in '05, and I think about the people that helped me, starting with Greta, and then all the people in between, from, like I said, the FBI Miami, the FBI in Birmingham, the U.S. Attorney's Office here, and prosecutor, Lloyd Peoples, and everyone, Catherine Crosby, everyone has really rallied together as a team to make this happen. And then even getting involved, George Seymour with Patriot Strategies, and his business associate Mark, and I think of Peru, the good-hearted Peru. Dina Balarte. So Peru. In the U.S., thank goodness we have goodwill, and they're passionate too and strong, and wanted me to be able to have this opportunity. And so I'm grateful to Peru for giving me this opportunity.
You mentioned Matt. What's this been like for him?
Now, as we go back and remind ourselves, not only did he do this with one, but he also did it in Peru, where he got away with it. And as a parent, I can't imagine the anguish this woman has gone through at all.
Growing up kind of in the shadow of this issue.
I don't really know. But I know one thing, he definitely, I think, has Natalee living through him. He went on and became an airline pilot, and just so accomplished. And I think somehow she's living her life through him. So, and but I think he's, as I said, that day I saw him June 9th, I went, oh, he's going to be okay. Yeah. When he walked up those steps, I was like, I'm done. Even if I hadn't have gotten to today, I felt like that was justice right there.
These sentences, I believe, are concurrent, right, with what he's serving in Peru. Is that correct?
Yes, they
So there's
are.
no real chance he's probably going to be back here serving time.
No.
Do you feel like, though, that wasn't your main goal?
That was not my goal, and that should be the goal of Aruba. That was their responsibility, not mine. I'm just the mother who wanted answers. It's Aruba that has the 2 double murders on their hand, not me.
Do you feel like Natalee's resting easier now?
I do. I think so, because I think she probably was hoping.
I have to say that this is a very, very strong mom. And she has had time to heal in a sense of what has happened to her. That she's been able to see peace with where her daughter is at now. Instead of having the unknown, like the guy made claims that he sold her. So as a parent, I couldn't imagine knowing that my child was sold into slavery. And I can only imagine that it's probably sex slavery. So, now mom can be kind of like at peace and rested and know that, okay, we can lay her to peace. It's so heartbreaking when I hear stories where the parents aren't, getting the justice from the justice system for their children or for their loved ones in general.
Maybe I could enjoy a little bit of life left. 18 years, long time. I didn't need to be investigating it for the rest of my life.
Can you do it though? Can you put it behind you now? You've been doing it, like you said, for so long.
No, it's over. Yeah. There's no more rabbit holes to be pulled down. There's no more swirling theories. There's none of that chaotic running around anymore.
Well, we wish you the very best.
Thank you.
And hope you get to enjoy life a little bit.
And I think it's all kind of started too right here at home. So Birmingham lit the fire that just spread and helped me out, and everyone's been so amazingly supportive. So thank you.
Thank you. For your time
Thank
today.
you.
So the FBI announced that the Aruban authorities had provided the agency with documents, suspect interviews, and other evidence. Investigators found a piece of duct tape with strands of blonde hair attached to it. The samples were tested at the Dutch lab. A group from the Aruba police prosecutor's office traveled to the FBI Center's laboratory to consult with the American investigators. The hair samples that were tested a second time, they said they did not belong to Holloway. So that tells me how many people did he do this to? So the brothers were arrested on August 26th, along with a new suspect, 21-year-old Freddie. Freddie's lawyer, was taking photographs of underage girls having inappropriate physical contact with that girl. And an incident allegedly, let's say allegedly, occurred before Holloway's disappearance. So they had a habit of really being into the young girls and stalking them, I would kind of say, in a way. Yeah. Oh, my heart is just hurting. So Van der Slot's mother, Anita Van der Slot, was in a desperate attempt to get the boys to talk. But there was nothing to talk about. While no public explanation, when they made the rearrest of the Calpo boys, they just weren't going to get them to really say what happened. On September 3rd, the fourth detained suspects were released by a judge despite the attempts of the prosecution to keep them in custody. And again, this is where, our judicial system fails. Like, sometimes I wish they could just go with their gut, but I know they can't. Because even if they know in their gut that something's not right, if there's not sufficient evidence, they can get in trouble for holding someone unjustly. Let me read through a few comments. Thank you, Kaylee, for being here. Gemini Guy, Gray Pill Podcast. I appreciate you. Hi, Jim. How are you doing? So Kaylee is familiar with this case. And, it really gets her goat too. It's just too many bad things happen to these really young girls. And boys, for that matter. Boys are not exempt from being abused whatsoever, so please don't think they are. Kaylee said, so they even extorted money out of them and promised to give them the location of the remains and then ran off with the money. Wow. That is just unreal. Unreal. So I do believe I have the confession, which I will play. Let's see if I can. Oh, here it is. Just give me 1 sec. Okay. Oh, there's no sound. Hold on. Is there sound? There's still no sound. Okay. I think I did it wrong, but I don't know. There. There's no sound. There, no sound. It's so sad when you see what seemingly seems like a nice young man that is like that's not so nice. Even the look on his face is like what did I do?
Los cargos planteados por el representante del Ministerio Público en su acusación.
Yo quiero escogerme a mi confesión sincero, pero no soy de acuerdo con todos los agravantes que me impuesta el Ministerio Público.
So, Miss Kaylee. So that just stated that he wasn't charged with her murder, but yet I just saw that it was like he was. He finally gave up the goods. I wonder why that is. I'm looking for the I know, I'm sorry, I'm slacking. I'm normally kind of have my stuff together a little bit. But I came across this and I was just like, wow. This is what I was looking for. Let's see. Okay, it's on Court TV. Okay, thank you, sweetheart. Okay, just give me 1 second. I'm trying. Okay, I think I have it. I'm looking for the court TV one. Oh my gosh. Let's see. CNN. Oh, I can't find it, and I can't get to it through the link. I think this is it, but I guess you could tell me. Okay.
Breaking news, video just coming in. The prime suspect in the disappearance of Natalee Holloway, Joran Vandersloot, has just touched down in the U.S. This is at Birmingham International Airport. This is what we can see. You can see the black cars there waiting for the airplane. It is landed. We're not yet certain, or I am not yet certain, if he has exited the plane or not. But huge news. Vandersloot was extradited this morning from Peru to the state of Alabama. The Dutchman faces extortion and wire fraud charges. He's accused of trying to sell false information on the whereabouts of Natalee's remains to her family. The 18-year-old was last seen alive in 2005, leaving a nightclub in Aruba with Vandersloot and 2 other men. I want to go live now to Birmingham and our own Court TV legal correspondent, Kelly Craft. Kelly, tell us everything. First of all, we know that Vandersloot has just arrived. What do we know about next steps and what happens now?
Well, Ashley, first off, this is just huge news. We've been here for the last several days awaiting Joran Vandersloot's arrival here back to the United States and then eventually to this courthouse behind me, the federal courthouse, where he will face charges of extradition and extortion. I just wanted to take a look behind me to see if anything was taking place, to see if there was any sort of caravan or anything. Now, we heard, as you just reported, that he just landed at the airport, but then we were talking with some people out here on the streets, and they were saying that there was an accident out on the roadway, so it might take some time for them to get here, but it could be here sooner than what we could expect. But all of this has gone back and forth for quite some time. These charges that he is facing, he was indicted on these charges back in 2010. This is wire fraud and extortion in connection with the Natalee Holloway case. These are really the only charges that even, connect him to this disappearance of Natalee Holloway. And so he's going to be coming here and facing these charges in Birmingham, Alabama. So again, Ashley, as you reported, he has touched down here in the United States, here in Birmingham, Alabama, and we will expect to be seeing him sometime at the federal courthouse to face these charges.
All right, and I'm just, again, this is a live shot. I do want our viewers to know that this is what is happening right here at the moment. You can see in the middle the 3 black cars. You can see the local police on the front with 2 cars, 2 vehicles, 3 vehicles behind. I would think, Kelly, that he has now exited the airplane. Those were right next to the airplane, but viewers, you're seeing as much as we know, and we're seeing too. Do we know, Kelly, if we know, what happens after he's actually booked into that facility that you mentioned?
Well, now that he is going to be on U.S. ground, the whole court process will take place. We'll have an initial court date where he will appear and he will hear what the charges are against him. He obviously knows what they are, but he will officially be told, you are facing the charges of extortion and wire fraud in connection with the Natalee Holloway case. And then he will plead, and we'll have to see how he pleads, guilty or not guilty. And depending upon how he pleads, then the next step in the court process will continue. If he pleads not guilty, obviously the whole discovery process will start. We do know that a motion was sent for a public defender to represent Joran Vandersloot, so we knew that that happened. And in regard to the next steps, we'll just have to hear when the initial court date takes place. And of course, we're going to be here to cover all the latest developments in this case. But again, this is just a moment that everybody has been waiting for. These charges go back to 2010. Beth Halloway, Natalee's mother, has said that this finally, maybe they can get some sort of closure and some justice in this case.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming, I know. And a reminder to everyone that, of course, it doesn't matter what country a person is from. If they're facing criminal charges here in the United States, they have a right to be represented by counsel, hence the reason for a motion that's been filed for a public defender. All right, Kelly, what else did the author share with you that you spoke with?
Yeah, Ashley, we talked with an author of the book. His name is Cole Thompson. He wrote this book called Portrait of a Monster, along with another woman, Lisa Pulitzer. They both are New York Times best-selling authors, and they really got a first-hand account of what took place in this Natalee Holloway case, as well as the murder of Stephanie Flores. That was the murder of a Peruvian woman back in 2010. And let's listen to what the author had to say. He had so much great insight. He was talking about the prison system in Peru. He was talking about this scheme that Joran van der Sloot kind of concocted. So let's listen to some of that interview.
We want to break away from those closing arguments to take you to Alabama, where we're expecting this press conference with Beth Halloway to start any second now. You can see the movement around that podium. There's our Chanley Painter is coming out of the courthouse, too. You just saw Chanley's face there. What we do know is that the details of what Joran van der Sloot claims happened to Natalee Holloway are coming out. Again, according to Chanley, he says he bludgeoned her to death. Part of the deal here for this guilty conviction and part of the plea deal set forth for Mr. van der Sloot was that he would stay with the he would tell the family basically what happened, because they have been waiting for decades to find out what exactly happened to their daughter, Natalee. She went on a senior trip in Aruba and never found out to what happened. They knew he was likely the person. He denied it for years. But now, some closure, one would hope, for Beth Halloway. According to her attorney, they were part of this scenario where she got to listen real time to his confession. So Beth Halloway was there listening to him. And in court today, Joran says he bludgeoned Natalee to death after she refused his sexual advances. They went home, and then he went home and I guess went on a porn website. Natalee's parents heard this, again, as it was happening. The bottom line is the plea agreement was 24 months in prison to be served in Peru. It's going to run concurrent with his current term, which ends in 22 years. And then after release, he'll have 3 years supervised.
Did they really just say only 34 months in prison? Tell me there was like at least 134 months, because I think I misheard that.
With his current term, which ends in 22 years. And then after release, he'll have 3 years supervised. It'll be a supervised release scenario. And there's Beth Halloway. We're, again, expecting to hear from her momentarily.
Okay, so that was 22 years plus another couple of years of supervised, like suspended sentence type thing. Why didn't he get life? I mean, our law's different there. He'll still be like reasonably young by the time he gets out. This is absurd.
A press conference. He also has to pay $25,000 in restitution, but one would have to think this was all about her, Beth Halloway, and her unwillingness to give up in terms of getting answers for what happened to her daughter. She has a number of allies that have helped her through this process. Greta Van Susteren been very instrumental in all of this over the years, helping to get to this point. And this point is so important for her. As we wait, let's bring in Matthew Mangino. And Matthew, I'm going to cut you off if we get Chanley and or Beth Halloway, that press conference starts. But your thoughts, you're a former prosecutor. This was a special sort of deal because of that relentless work from the Holloway family, their attorneys, and other advocates that really pushed.
Well, no question. It never gave up on this case. And it's interesting the way it evolved into this extortion charge, which he was brought back for. What's surprising here is that, he's admitted to murdering Natalee Holloway, and he's never really going to be held accountable for that because there's a 12-year statute of limitations in Aruba with regard to murder, which is unlike the United States. The United States, in most states, if not all, there's no statute of limitations. So you admit to a homicide 20 years after it happened or 40 years after it happened, you can still be prosecuted. But that's not the case in Aruba. But this does bring some closure.
So that explains my question where Aruba doesn't have a statute of limitations. Wow. And they had him so many times, so close to having him.
For the family, certainly they know what happened to their daughter, however unpleasant it is to hear that. So it's not unusual to have a plea deal in exchange for information about victims, which is what occurred here.
Did everybody else see that? Like, he's like checking his watch. He's like yawning. Like, this has zero effect on him emotionally. Like, he doesn't care. He doesn't feel the remorse for his actions. He's not accountable for his actions.
In this case.
Yeah, and
he's laughing.
It's
oh my God. I got to go back. Here, right here, he like goes to look at the time on his watch that he doesn't have on. And he's like yawning. And then he laughs.
Which is what occurred here in this case.
Yeah, and that it's hearing that, okay, your daughter was bludgeoned to death after she refused the sexual.
Have a plea deal in exchange for information about victims, which is what occurred here in this case.
Yeah, and that it's
that is
hearing
so unnerving.
that, okay, your daughter was bludgeoned to death after she refused the sexual advances. It's actually the worst case scenario, but it's probably what she knew all along, a scenario like this. Our Chanley Painter is outside of the courthouse now and is joining us. Chanley, let's start with
yes, Kaylee,
what
I did grab those other
transpired,
links and I have them ready to
that
play.
Courtroom. We know a little bit, but please fill us in.
Right, where to begin? Big news, and that is Joran Vandersloot has admitted the family of Natalee Holloway listening in and watching him do this with the federal authorities to bludgeoning her to death. The last night that she was seen with him at the bar during that 2005 graduation trip to Aruba. We learned more details sprinkled throughout this hearing. We learned that Natalee Holloway refused his sexual advances. He didn't get what he wanted. He bludgeoned her to death. We later learned from something the judge said that it's likely the Holloway family will never learn where her remains are. And we know that he was also sentenced to the maximum here that the judge could give. So in this plea agreement, he agreed, of course, to proffer, cooperate, to tell the truth. They vetted his story. They agreed it was truthful. And now he will serve the rest of his Peruvian sentence along with this maximum 20-year sentence in prison in Peru. So I guess that was a benefit to him that it wasn't consecutive. It would be a concurrent sentence. He waived his right to appeal this decision as well. So in mitigation, his attorney said that he cooperated, he was open and honest, and that, of course, he agrees to not pursue this any further. Inside the courtroom, Ted, during the statement of Natalee's mother, I mean, it was emotional. I'm trying to flip through my notes. Let me find some of my notes. I don't know how much you've said of what she told this court, but let me find that section in my notes, and I want to read some of what she said.
I don't feel bad
Take
now.
your time. We have not heard much from what Beth said. We're just getting some reporting on the sentence and what Joran claimed he did to Natalee, and that's that bludgeoning. But yeah, what was it like? What was her demeanor?
I want to actually, you mentioned Joran. He spoke today before Beth Holloway did. He spoke on his own behalf. when he entered the courtroom, it was about 10 minutes early. No one was expecting him to walk in so soon. He towers above everyone that was on his team there in that part of the courtroom. He's a big guy. He had his shoulders held back, his chest up, his chin up. He was confident. He smiled. He greeted his attorneys, and he answered the judge when she would ask him questions with, "Yes, ma'am, I do, ma'am, yes, ma'am," with his accent. But this was the longest time we did hear him speak. And Ted, he says, "I want to apologize to the Holloway family." He further apologized to his own family. He went on to say that he hopes his statement that he gave, his proffer, his admission to being the murderer of Natalee Holloway, provides some kind of closure to the Holloway family. He went on to say that he no longer is the person that he was 18 years ago, 15 years ago, in 2010 when he defrauded the mother who'd been searching for her daughter for 5 years nonstop, hoping for an answer when he extorted Beth Holloway. He says he's no longer that person, that he wants to confess to what he did because he's found salvation through Jesus Christ while incarcerated. And it was in that moment his voice trailed off. I'm sitting right behind the 4 to 5 rows of the Holloway friends and family inside the courtroom, Ted. In the moment when he said that he had found Jesus, they all looked at each other, rolled their eyes, and shook their heads like they couldn't believe what he was saying. It was a short statement. He sat down, and then, of course, the judge says that she considered these victim impact statements that were both written. Natalee Holloway's mom, Beth Holloway, she stands, everyone is just so silent. She stands, walks to the lectern, Ted, stops, turns around, looks at Euron sitting there at counsel table for a couple of seconds and just makes eye contact with him. And then she turns back to the lectern and she begins reading a short statement that she prepared to say. Here's some of what she said. She says, "For 18 years, Euron, you lied about what happened to my daughter." She makes emotional pauses while she speaks, so confident. I don't know where she gets her strength. She held it together. She says, "And finally, you admitted to murdering her." These are when we learned inside the courtroom exactly what he did. She goes on to say that you bludgeoned her to death. And in these moments, the gallery starts to sob. She says that you are a killer and you didn't get what you wanted, your sexual satisfaction, so you bludgeoned her to death. You are to blame. Your family is suffering. I know I'm getting kind of a rap in my ear, but I want to just completely share. She says, we have something in common. We both have a daughter. And she goes on to talk about his daughter and how her daughter will never return. And Ted, I'm being told we have to go to break, so we can just talk about this on the other side.
Yeah, all right. We're going to get the break in here, and then Beth Holloway is going to speak, and we'll have Chanley with us as well. We'll continue our breaking news coverage. Jorn van der Sloot pleading guilty and providing details of what happened to Natalee Holloway Stewart. To take you to Alabama, where we're expecting this press conference with Beth Holloway to start.
Yes. So, from what I just understood, you're correct, Kaylee. He had mentioned it quite a few times, like he kind of beat it around the bush, about it, but he wasn't like, he would change it up again and be like, oh, I lied. I mean, the family that he sold her, yes, I heard that. Crazy. It's like choked up. Oh.
Watching WBTM 13 News at midday, I'm Sarah Killian along Carla Wade. We have been following that breaking news all morning. Jorn van der Sloot has pleaded guilty to extortion and wire fraud. As part of that plea agreement, he has confessed to killing Natalee Holloway and disposing of her body. So many details released in court today, and we have been following every minute of it.
And we just learned that we have a copy of that confession that Joran van der Sloot. To the full text of that copy, we're going to go out to John Papke, who was in the courtroom this morning. I see him on his phone, probably getting it about the same time that we did, pouring through the details of that confession. John.
Yeah, I just sent that out to everybody. It was filed as an attachment to the sentencing memorandum by the U.S. Attorney's Office. They said they would be filing this today, and basically it's a transcript of the FBI interview with van der Sloot about what happened to Natalee Holloway in May of 2005. Basically, after he tried to advance on her sexually, that according to his transcript, she basically kneed him in the private area. And he kicked her in the face, read down. He basically extremely hard. He was laying down unconscious. Block, laying on the cinder block. Like they said, exact same cinder blocks. I see a huge cinder block laying on the beach. Take that and I smash her head with and I can read, but that's the box.
Who was in the courtroom this morning. I see him getting time that we did, pouring through the details of that confession. John.
Yeah, I just sent that out to everybody. It was Sloat about what happened to Natalee Holloway of 2005.
Guilty to extortion and wire fraud. As part of that plea agreement, he has confessed to killing Natalee Holloway and disposing of her body. So many details released in court today, and we have been following every minute of it.
And we just learned that we have a copy of that confession that Joran van der Sloot. To the full text of that copy, we're going to go out to John Papke, who was in the courtroom this morning. I see him on his phone, probably getting it about the same time that we did, pouring through the details of that confession. John.
Yeah, I just sent that out to everybody. It was filed as an attachment to the sentencing memorandum by the U.S. Attorney's Office. They said they would be filing this today, and basically it's a transcript of the FBI interview with van der Sloot about what happened to Natalee Holloway in May of 2005. Basically, after he tried to advance on her sexually, that according to his transcript, she basically kneed him in the private area. That is when he kicked her in the face, and I'll read down here, basically extremely hard. She was laying down, unconscious, possibly even dead, he said, but definitely unconscious. And then I see right next to her, there's a huge cinder block laying on the beach. And then the investigator said, when you say cinder block, I'm looking at the walls of this place. Is it like those? And he said, exact same cinder blocks. I see a huge cinder block laying on the beach. I take this and I smash her head in with it completely. And there's a lot more details. I mean, I could read, but that's the crux of how Joran van der Sloot says he killed Natalee Holloway in 2005.
Wow, that is just absurd. That's just crazy. And then for him to sit there and just kind of laugh about it, like willy-nilly. Oh, this is horrible, Kaylee. Yes, he tortured that poor family. I agree. Wow. Oh.
And you can go through it even more, John.
Yes.
It looks like he mentions the ocean part that you talked about that was said in the courtroom.
Let's see. I decide to take her and put her into the ocean. So I grab her and I I half pull, half walk with her into the ocean. See, I push her off, and I walk up to about my knees into the ocean, and I push her off into the sea. I'm sorry, there's a lot of ahs. I'm trying to skip over here because it is a transcript of every word he said. He says, yeah, after that I get out, I walk home. And that's pretty much it. Yep, that's it.
Yeah.
So, so after she refused his sexual advances, she basically kneed him in the crotch area, is what it says in the statement in the transcription, and then he kicks her in the face, which he says knocked her unconscious. And while she was laying there unconscious, he found a cinder block and basically bludgeoned her to death with a cinder block, and then dragged her out into the ocean and pushed her body out into the ocean.
Wow.
So that's what the
Maybe that's what he meant. Remember when I was talking about the beginning of the story where he said that she wanted to see the sharks? That's where he came up with that idea.
That's what the confession that he made to the FBI states.
Details that a lot of people never knew they would get, 18 years later since.
And like Sarah was mentioning earlier, Hannah, how can we believe this guy? He's a known liar, and even Natalee's mother, Beth, stated that. But he underwent a polygraph examination. He passed that. So according to the FBI standards, what he...
And just keep that in mind. For those of you that are not familiar with polygraph tests, they're called stress tests. And stress tests, if you don't have remorse for an action, you're going to pass the stress test. If you don't feel guilty for an action, you'll pass the test. So stress tests are not admissible in court. They can be used as a guide, but they are not like hardcore evidence because people are capable of passing them, especially people that are narcissistic, sociopathic, because they don't have remorse for the pain that they cause others, whether it's physical or mental.
He said was the truth, and I even heard Lloyd Peoples, the assistant U.S. attorney, the main prosecutor in this case, say this is the closest thing we'll get to the truth about what happened to her that you can imagine, based on additional investigation that was done by the FBI. On top of this interview, I believe they checked out a few other things. They went down to Aruba, I believe, to check out where he said things happened, and to verify the environment and the setting of the killing, and ultimately, I mean, where her body is. Her body will never be found. It's 18 years ago. And if she, in fact, was pushed into the ocean, her body will never turn up. I mean, it's been 18 years. So.
And seeing this transcript, the confession here, not only just says a lot, but in what order do you think it might have happened with the FBI? Do you think they did the polygraph test first, or the confession first and then the polygraph to make sure that he wasn't lying given his past?
That I'm not sure. They didn't really relate that. I don't know if they interviewed him. I don't know if he was... This statement was given during the polygraph test, and they asked him these questions during the test, and they, looked at the equipment to see if, in fact, he had, risen, blood pressure levels. I don't know how that works.
Right.
My dad was an agent, but he never taught me how to, test somebody for lying. But basically, we don't know the exact order. I do get the feeling, and I haven't looked at every filing that was filed today because they filed a slew of attachments and arguments, the plea bargain, the sentencing memorandum. I haven't had a chance to look at all of them because they were just filed after the hearing ended or during the hearing itself. But I assume, obviously, they sent agents probably back down to Aruba. They've probably been there before a couple times, I would assume, over the years, to confirm, where he said this happened and, whether it was the hotel near the beach where there were cinder blocks, that kind of thing. And you even heard when I was reading the transcription of the interview, they said like this here. So maybe they were showing him video of where he claimed that this happened, and he said, yes, that's exactly where we were standing, that kind of thing. So there was additional investigation besides just the interview and the polygraph test.
So it seems as though this is the end when it comes to the trial and the case, but a lot of paperwork that has to be swift through, that you're going to have to go through and put a lot of the pieces together with what happened before today, before we got to this point.
Yeah, I mean, we'll take a look. Like I said, the plea bargain outlines different things and why the prosecution agreed to not pursue a trial. And honestly, like we mentioned earlier, guilty plea trial. Some people say, well, if you plead guilty, you get an easier sentence. In this situation, according to the judge, if he had gone to trial, he may have only gotten 3 to 4 years in prison, and the Holloway family wouldn't have received the confession. If he had fought it and decided to push forward and continue not cooperating or whatever, then and just went to trial, and they still convicted him of it, then there would have been no confession, and the trial would have ended up with maybe just the standard sentencing guideline of 3 to 4 years, whereas part of the plea bargain, they could tailor the penalty as they saw fit. And in this situation, it was the maximum penalty. It was 20 years, which is the most you can get for wire fraud or extortion. And those years are to be served concurrently with his sentence in Peru.
And I didn't ask you this before, but could you let us know, did he have representation? What did they say?
Oh, yes. Kevin Butler is the main public defender, federal public defender in Birmingham, and he defended him. He actually had a team of attorneys. He was very well represented, and they asked him multiple times, "Are you pleased with your representation?" And he said, "Yes, ma'am." And I mean, he didn't say anything. He didn't issue any statements that I remember that struck me as worth noting. It was pretty typical comments that a defense attorney would argue. The judge would ask, "Does your client understand the plea agreement? Does he understand what he's pleading guilty to and the sentencing recommendations and all that?" That's just pretty routine and typical. So he said that, but there was no official emotional statement on behalf of the defense attorney.
Okay. Is that a surprise there in a case like this, or?
No, not really. In this situation, in all the pleas and sentencings that I've heard, unless
I honestly can't believe that they're only getting him really on the extortion. Well, I guess it's because the incident didn't happen here in the U.S. It happened in Peru, so you would think that Peru would take it more seriously, but I guess it's their statute of limitations. I mean, it's just law can be so different in different places, and it's just heartbreaking sometimes.
For some reason the defendant does not want to speak and asks the defense attorney to read a statement for him. The defense attorney basically is sort of like his coach, his not referee, but his counselor, his guide in things, and make sure he understands what the judge is saying and what the legal documents say. But normally, if anything is said with emotion, with any profound nature, it would be the actual defendant himself, and that's we've recounted what Vandersloot himself said, that he was sorry, he apologized to the Holloway family, that he hopes that his confession and statement in court today brings them some sense of closure, and that he's a changed man, and that he has since given his life to Christ. That's kind of how he wrapped up his statement. But as for the attorney, he never really said anything that was worth noting that I remember.
And we want to reiterate, he did not need a translator at all.
He did not. Spoke very good English.
Okay. Thank you so much, John, again, bringing us all the details that have been going on. After 18 years, the Holloway family.
So with that being said, so this was just updated as of recently in the last 10 hours. So this family, went 2 decades in pain and anguish of their child, and they are finally getting the closure. And I'm happy that her mom, is handling it the way she is. This could be very, very complicated and very, very hard. But she finally does get closure, and this man will hopefully be put away for the rest of his life, even though it's only 20 years. Maybe he'll do something in there, and it'll be for the rest of his life, or something else could happen, whatnot. I do believe in karma, and it's in God's time. It's not always in our time, and that's so hard to deal with. But on a good note, we can be thankful that her parents can have that closure finally. That is well deserved. They put in a lot of work and a lot of effort into locating their daughter and getting to the bottom of the situation, and I'm glad that they didn't give up. So with that being said, I appreciate all of you being here. I miss you all. I am trying to, stay on top of, coming in and doing my thing. So I hope you all have a wonderful night. Mwah. And a wonderful Thursday. Thursday morning's coming up here soon. Some of you, it's already Thursday morning. So I hope you all have a wonderful Thursday. See you tomorrow.
I'm so cold. Yeah, my heart's sinking like a stone. Cold. I'm so cold. Yeah, my heart is sinking like a stone.